So the very first episode of Star Trek Discovery just dropped. This is my sister, and we've been looking for an opportunity to talk about something together, and Star Trek seemed like the perfect opportunity, so I've been thinking about this ever since they kind of announced it, that we would do kind of a post-episode review of it. Just so you know, the way this is going to work, we're going to talk about our general impressions of it, spoiler-free at the beginning in case you haven't watched yet. At the end, we'll talk some spoilers, and we'll tell you when we're about to do that. And we're going to watch this. This is just the very first episode, and then we're going to go watch the second episode that's already up on CBS All Access. So if you're checking this out, the basic premise of the show is it's set about 10 years before the original Star Trek series, and Michelle Yeoh is the captain of the ship, and they discover something out in space, and when they go to check it out, the Federation re-encounters the Klingons for the first time in 100 years is what they said?
That's what they said, 100 years.
And that's the setup for it. And our lead character is actually the first officer of the ship. So before we dive in and start telling you our thoughts on it, our impressions about it, be sure to write down below in the comment section your thoughts on it, and let me know, are you a Star Trek fan? What's kind of your background? And then your thoughts on this first episode. We'd love to hear your take on it and get some good discussions going on. All right, now here's what we thought about it. What was your initial takeaway from watching it?
This is very uneven feel right now. The interactions between the command staff feels wrong for Star Trek. It feels more familiar than that. I know Starfleet is not a military organization, but it acts and runs in a way that is a military organization. And the familiarity that they have between the first officer and the captain is over the top. And the science officer is just off-putting in his interactions with the rest of the crew. It feels like his sole purpose is there. And then there are some visual elements that very much feel like they went, hey, I think this looks like a cool idea from Star Wars. I'm going to steal that idea and stick a person in here who's got a robot helmet head on him. And he looks like he was lifted right out of Star Wars. And then the way they've redesigned the Klingons, they look like they took the characters from Stargate and went, okay, we like the aesthetic feel of Stargate, so we're going to make the Klingons look like the characters from Stargate, and it's just totally going to be awesome. And this is just from the first episode, but the way they're doing the pronunciation of the Klingon felt strange. Now it could just be different filming style or something, I don't know. So it didn't have any of the things that I was really afraid of, because when they were doing all the promo stuff, they were like, we're going to be able to do all sorts of stuff that we can't do because we've previously been on broadcast TV, but this was also the one that they were showing on broadcast TV. Yeah. So all right, that's the part that could still be scary.
So like for me, it felt, it didn't feel like old Star Trek. It didn't feel like new Star Trek. It felt like its own new thing that was like stiff. So super serious. Like there's a couple like little jokes in the beginning, but then that didn't continue. It was like once it got going, you have the kind of off-putting first officer that you mentioned. It was like Sheldon from the TV show from Big Bang Theory that they kept promoting that during the first episode. It was like him, except as the first officer in a very off-putting, strange way. Science officer. And so it wasn't something that really kind of like felt right. So that was kind of my big thing about it, is that it didn't feel like it found its own step. Granted, that's a long-standing tradition in Star Trek shows, is not finding your footing right out of the gate. This one felt like I don't know what they're trying to do with it. Like what's their new thing that's that is a unique take on Star Trek. Mm-hmm. Whereas you'd say Enterprise, all right, we're going several hundred years in the past. You'd say Voyager, going way out to this new place. Deep Space Nine, it's on a spaceship. This one, slight prequel, more Klingon.
Yeah, strange kind of prequel, but in the first episode, it doesn't even keep with its own continuity. Yeah,
certainly not keeping with old continuities. So what are the good things?
Good things. It's shiny.
I think you have to say it's a very well-produced show.
It's a very well-produced show. It has some promise of something that could be really good and have some really interesting ideas. The problem is that I'm running into, to give you a good is that the first episode doesn't feel like a complete episode.
Yeah.
It feels like they wanted to do...
moving to bed.
It feels like they had a 2-hour opening, but they only gave you the first hour of the 2. It's like if you were to watch Encounter and Farpoint when you're showing it as a rerun, where you only see part 1, and so you only get half the storyline.
The first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
No, yes, sorry.
And it's a 2-parter.
Yes. So this feels like we got part 1 of the 2-part premiere. And so that's hard to give a good sense of what's going on.
It just kind of, we're watching it, and the way it ended, it didn't end with like a title card or credit coming up. It ended, and we're like, okay, I guess it's coming back. And then the commercial ended, and we're like, that's it. And I guess, I mean, you can see where that would be like a good cliffhanger, like, ooh, what just happened? But it didn't play out like that.
Yeah, it played out like it was at a commercial break. So, like, people went to the bathroom, and we're like, I better go to the bathroom real quick before the commercial break ends. And then we got back, and we're like, okay, did I miss anything? I'm like, no, the Discovery thing is just coming up, and then credits. And so we got a little confused.
So let's kind of walk through our bads and get in some of the specific ones. Klingons, I think we both agreed we hate it.
Yeah,
we hate the look.
Hate the look. My husband turned to me and he says, "Hey, look, it's like it's King Henry VIII with clothes made out of chitin." And I was like, I looked at him and I said, "Oh my goodness, you're right. It's like out of the whole Elizabethan court, which is terrible to be ready for Klingons."
Then they show them going into the coffin, and we're like, "Hey, this is like Stargate."
And we're like, "Oh look, they're Egyptian now."
Yeah, and all of it was, and then they're putting their coffins on the outside of the ship, and all sorts of things where you're like,
that are weird that don't make sense within the lore of Star Trek, and. So
yeah, weird. And so then from here, we'll call spoilers at this point in time. Moving forward, the first officer character, the lead character of the show, raised by Vulcans, specifically kind of Sarek?
That's not actually spoilery. That was actually been in all the promos. So that part is not spoilery. The part that is spoilery is they admit that... So this is where they break their own continuity within just this episode. They say, we haven't seen Klingons for 100 years. And then they say, are you sure your past with the Klingons where they killed your parents isn't influencing your judgment? You can't have both of those statements said within 5 minutes of each other be true. Like, did they run this by somebody to keep a continuity? That's like basic level.
And I'm sure they'll have some explanation because I heard that and I was like, are they going to explain that? Because they've made such a big point 5 minutes ago. We haven't seen Klingons in 100 years, and then 5 minutes later, Federation officer talking to Federation officer, they killed your parents, and you're going, what?
Yeah. So one thing I want to say that it is a plus that you couldn't say without getting into spoilers. The way they talk about how the Vulcans encountered Klingons, and the way that they kept the Klingons from getting into a big war was they fired first. And my husband's like, well, that doesn't make any sense for Vulcans. And I was like, well, that actually kind of works with how they portray Vulcans in Enterprise. In Enterprise, they portray them as more aggressive and a lot more willing to punch first while also claiming to be pacifists. And that I actually can kind of see that progression of that statement, but it was kind of amusing. The person they've got playing Sarek is too young for the age he's supposed to be. You cannot go from this actor playing Sarek to Mark Leonard in an original series in this amount of time.
Yeah, I guess just talk about a couple more things that I kind of stuck out to me as odd. So, first officer person flies out, runs into a Klingon, and struck me as odd. She kills the Klingon.
Yes.
And they're like the battle species. What did I miss? Like, did I miss something as to why that happened, or is that just as bad of like odd writing as I thought it was?
It was, and it also was like, so the Klingon who's randomly out there has a bat'leth, and it's like okay, so like they. Well, yes, Klingons fight with that, at least in the original series, and most of it, they show them in these types of scenarios of they're fighting with phasers or things like that. The big time where you see it is like Deep Space Nine. You see them using it in like, we're going out on a vengeance quest, and we're actually trying to get ourselves killed, because they have the original captains from the original series come back in a Deep Space Nine episode, and they run basically a suicide mission with the goal of getting themselves killed, and they're not successful for the most part. Yeah, but so that just was odd.
Very odd. Like, what? Is she that? Where's she supposed to be that good?
It felt like to me like it was an accident. Like the whole exchange was less than 30 seconds. Like you see the Klingon up, you see the Batleth, and she does something, and the lighting is not clear, so you can't see exactly what happens. But then suddenly he's got it sticking out the back of his chest, and you're like, how did that happen?
Final thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Kind of the final little part of the episode. Disagreement on how to deal with the Vulcans. First officer runs in. Vulcan nerve pinches the captain.
The captain!
Takes her out. Starts a mutiny.
Yeah. Well, actually attempts to start a mutiny, and everyone else is like, are you sure this is what the captain was all good with? Which goes back to that whole... It's not acting like the chain of command. And they're like, yeah, she's good. The captain was good with it. She's just talking with the general, smoothing things over. And then apparently the captain recovers from a Vulcan nerve pinch much faster than anyone else has in the history of Star Trek. Or it's because she's human. And in all previous Star Trek lore, humans have not been able to do a Vulcan nerve pinch.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just
placebo,
she doesn't know how to do
placebo effect.
Oh, it's the placebo effect for someone who didn't know when they were getting a Vulcan nerve pinch. Yeah.
My joke had as much thought as the writing of the end of that episode.
Yes.
But I mean, it felt...
How does she still have a career to be the main character in this show after this episode? This is the thing that gets you kicked out of Starfleet.
Right, like that's... You can't justify, unless they say, oh, she literally did have brain damage, and so she was acting crazy, in which case then she's out of the episode for several episodes. But like the fact that it happened, like, ooh, this is a weird start. The way it played out with the crew is like, this is weird. And then even just you're more comfortable moving away from Gene Roddenberry's everybody loves each other on the crew. I'm not a Gene Roddenberry purist, but I think there's something, the optimism of that you're not like mutiny and infighting isn't the core of the show. Where for me, seeing a mutiny in the first episode is like, that's anti-Star Trek.
That I 100% agree with. I was going more of, so like what they did in Deep Space Nine and Voyager to get around Roddenberry's Starfleet all gets along thing is they introduced crew members who weren't Starfleet. And so you see the interactions in Deep Space Nine and Voyager where they don't automatically agree. They don't automatically have the same purpose in mind. And that was where more of what I was saying of you could have people who they disagreed, and they might even fundamentally disagree with how it should be happening, but they don't automatically like mutiny. That was more what I was trying to say. All
right, let's close it out. Give our final thoughts. For me, I don't think I liked it, and I don't think I liked it as Star Trek or as just a show in general. Not so much so that I'm like, I'm not going to watch it. Of course, I'm going to keep watching it. I'm going to give it another chance. We're about to watch the second episode. That's actually why I'm trying to rush this while we still have more to talk about, because we'll probably shoot another one of these in about an hour. But my first inclination is it just feels too stiff without having something new to offer. And as a Star Trek fan, I don't like the changes.
Yes. I'm willing to give it a chance because, traditionally aside from the original series, Star Trek is not on its best footing in pilot episodes. It, like you said, it doesn't really feel like Star Trek. It's not introducing anything that's a new voice that is interesting. We're sitting there with all of us and we're like, oh, look, there's something that's from Stargate. There's something from Star Wars. And so it feels like it's just a little bit of everything. So now we gotta go see what happens in the second episode. Maybe
I want to be won over.
Maybe they pull it off, and you're like, "Oh, okay." We just cut off in the middle of the storyline, and we'll be like, "Wow, that's amazing." My big fear, though, is we're going into what is the All Access portion, and they're like, "All gloves are off. Now we can show you everything that we could never show you on broadcast television," because that was kind of what they implied in all the promotional material. In which case, this will be the last time my kids watch it.
Alright, if you guys are new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, like what you're watching right now. But the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies, I want to talk about movies with you and my sister. So join us down in the comments section. Let's get a lively discussion, and thank you so much for watching.